I have no idea. Who knows? All right, we're good to go.
Go.
Okay. Well, Rebecca Heyman Orr is a Hamilton County native that has trained at the Wildlife Center in Bloomington, Indiana for 2.5 years. She has a degree in environmental management from IU and is with the Hoosier Wildlife Rescue and Rehabilitation. They're committed to helping injured, orphaned, and sick wildlife in Indiana. Their core service is to provide state licensed care to these animals with the goal of releasing them back into the wild. This includes, but is not limited to, providing veterinary care, housing, and raising orphan babies and juveniles. They're also committed to promoting healthy human wildlife relationships via educational programs for schools, events, and community outreach initiatives. So please welcome Rebecca Hammond Orr.
Hello, my name is Becca, and I am the founder and director of Hoosier Wildlife Rescue. So we are a DNR licensed wildlife rescue, and we are located on the northern end of Hamilton County. We take in injured, orphaned, and sick wildlife, like you said, and we have a permit with the state to be able to take in these wildlife. So the majority of what we take comes in is babies. So right now it's baby season. So we've got lots of orphaned wildlife, and we will rehabilitate them and release them. So all of our orphaned wildlife that comes in, we raise them to be released back into the wild. So we take special care to make sure that they are not used to people, they're not nice to people, and that they have all of the attributes that they need to be able to be released back into their native habitat. And our release sites are either nature preserves or private property where we have permission to be able to release these wildlife back out there. So a lot of people, when they hear what we do, they think, oh, they take in these raccoons that I found in my attic. And sometimes we do, but the majority of what we do is we try to keep wildlife wild. So we try to reunite babies with mom. A lot of the wildlife that comes in is human-caused interactions. So the majority of what we deal with in the summer that is a huge strain on us is either I have a dog and I found a bunny nest in my yard. Can you come get them? Or we deal with a lot of I trapped a raccoon last week and released it out in the country. Now I have baby raccoons. What do I do? Um, and it's
Wow.
actually illegal for people in Indiana without this license to be able to keep wildlife longer than 24 hours. So if you're keeping a wild animal longer than 24 hours, you're in violation of the law, and you can have fines against you with the Department of Natural Resources. I know of one person that kept raccoons for 6 months and lost their job because they worked for the state. So they lost their job. They had a court case against them, and they had fines. So it can escalate if they choose to. And a big reason for that is safety. Raccoons are a rabies vector species, which means that they can carry rabies and transmit rabies to humans or other animals. Now, the last raccoon rabies case in Indiana was 1979. So it's been quite a while since we had raccoon rabies. There was a case in southern Indiana earlier this year where a skunk had it, but they think that it crossed state lines. So we're a little bit wary, but we're not super concerned about that happening up here. So they don't want you to keep raccoons because if a raccoon bites you and you don't tell anybody, it could be a rabies concern. Now, we follow lots of strict guidelines put down by the Department of Natural Resources and the Indiana State Health Department to make sure that all of our volunteers and all of our people within the organization, the people that find the animals as well, are safe when handling these animals when they bring them to us. But that's just one of the reasons that we have that law in place of the 24-hour rule. So if somebody finds injured, orphaned, or sick wildlife in the state, who do they call? Who do they talk to? And we are one of the few people that they can call to help them with that situation. There's a few other centers in Indiana. We are aiming to have a type of center that is very uncommon. Our goal in the next 5 years is to have paid staff members. And that is, there's only 5 centers in the entire state that have paid staff members that do what we do. So it's a goal that's out there, something that we're aiming for, and that just helps us take in more wildlife. So if you find wildlife and you don't have anybody to take it to, the Department of Natural Resources will usually recommend just leaving it outside. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that. If you find a baby raccoon or an orphaned opossum or an injured animal, it's very hard to do, especially when you know that there's something that you can do. So lots of people raise them illegally, but we are there to help try to facilitate making sure that they're raised properly with the proper nutrition. They get all of the right enrichment. They're raised in the right environment to be able to go back out into the wild. And then we also monitor our release sites. So, and I'll use raccoons again because a lot of people are like, oh, there's too many raccoons. I don't understand why you do raccoons. And I had somebody recently tell me that about squirrels, which is a first for me. But we release our animals on release sites and we monitor each year. Okay, so like last year, if I released 6 raccoons on 20 acres, I'm not going to release 6 raccoons on those acreages this year. We're going to, give it a break, give a minute for the population to bounce back, and that's where my degree comes in handy. So I studied at the at Indiana University. I have a bachelor's in environmental management, but I also studied a little bit at the Kelley School of Business. So when I first went into college, I wanted a dual major in business and environmental management, and it's both come in handy in ways that I didn't even think when I first started college. But we want to make sure that we have a good carrying capacity in the environment, so we're not putting too many animals in there that there's not enough resources for everybody. And so we keep an eye on all of our release sites. So I was one of the few people that do this at this moment in time. It's April 11th, and we are one of 3 centers around Indianapolis that's open. The other 2 are closed. So there's 3, 2 of them are closed. We're the only people that are open for intakes at this time. So usually when centers are full, they close on intakes. So we're always trying to, do better and see what we can do because centers close and they can't take any more animals. And then where do people take these animals? And then they end up raising them, and then lots of different things can happen. I have people that contact me years later and say, oh, I had a squirrel that I kept for a few years and now something's wrong. What is it? Or I have a raccoon that bit somebody and now they're confiscating it. What do I do? And we're just trying to minimize those situations, but also provide the best care that we can. So we take in everything but birds. We have the ability to take in birds. We just don't have the space. So we take in mammals, reptiles, amphibians. In 2022, we took in 805 animals from over 13 counties in Indiana. And in 2023, we took in 864 animals from over 24 counties. We were the second to last center in the entire state to close on raccoons last year. And we closed in May. We did 174 raccoon babies, and 90% of those came from human-caused interactions. So somebody trapped the mom, somebody did something, and then we ended up with those babies. It wasn't that nature took its course or anything. So I had people driving from Crown Point, Indiana to bring me animals, 3-4 hours away, driving as far as they could because we were the only place that was open. So what we also try to do here is we try to train the next generation of wildlife rehabbers. So we really want all of our people that come in and volunteer with us, we work with them on getting their own license. And if need be, we work on them getting their own space to be able to rehab, because we need more people in the state that do this, because if we're all closing in the year, then that's, a sign that maybe there's too many animals and not enough people to help. So we try and work with a lot of our volunteers on getting their license, what they need to do, and we also train them on minimum standards. So we have regulations put forth by the Department of Natural Resources. At Hoosier Wildlife, we try to take that a step higher. So we've got the bare minimum, which is what the Department of Natural Resources will govern, and that's basically when they pop by whenever they want to, we have to have clean cages. And that's about it. There's not a whole lot of the regulations that tell you what you have to do. Now, we aim a step higher, and that's minimum standards, which sounds to be the minimum standard, but it's actually one of the gold standards that you can go for. So we make sure that we don't have too many in a cage. We make sure that we're not keeping them for too long. We make sure that they've got the right enrichment, the right diet, that they're clean all the time. We vaccinate all of our animals that we can vaccinate. So raccoons get vaccinated for rabies and distemper and parvo. They also get vaccinated for leptospirosis. Our skunks get vaccinated for distemper, parvo, and leptospirosis, and then our bats get vaccinated for rabies when we can. So we're trying to work with the animals to have healthier lives. Now, the vaccines are not forever. They usually last about, I think the longest that is recorded is 21 months. So they last about 21 months. But we're also taking them from their moms, or their moms have been taken from them, and they don't have the antibodies that their mom would have for a lot of different things. So it kind of gives them a little bit of an extra boost. So the people that come into our center, the volunteers, we work with them to make sure that they understand those standards and they understand why we go for those standards, and that's quality of care. And then we try and help them become rehabbers. And doing so, we have a larger reach than other normal people. We extend from Indianapolis to Muncie, and then from Zionsville to Newcastle. So it's a big section of area that we're able to help out, but we have a lot of people in those areas that are either volunteering with us or they're training with us to be rehabbers on their own. And then we can kind of work as a network as well. So extending that area, we can help a lot of people understand what we do. So we do education programs with Hamilton County Schools. We do education programs with Indy Parks. We do a lot over at Sulphur Springs Park. So we try and make sure that we are educating people, because a lot of people don't understand wildlife in general. I have a lot of people that'll reach out to me and say, oh, like I helped an opossum birth babies, but opossums will keep their babies in the pouch because they're marsupials. So the babies are born and then they go into a pouch. And then when something happens to them, the babies will come out of the pouch because they understand that something's wrong. For example, we got an opossum a couple days ago that was attacked by a dog, and she had babies in her pouch because when she was attacked, she dropped them out of necessity, out of survival, either for the babies or for herself. She drops them. So they all come out of the pouch, and we were able to get her calm, get her the right medication she needed to not be in pain, and get her some food. And luckily, very luckily, all of the babies were back in the pouch yesterday. So they've all gone back into the pouch. So we don't even know how many there are. We're not going to stress her out by looking and making her uncomfortable. We estimate there's about 10 in there. So they all went back into her pouch, and she's able to raise them. And we'll keep her comfortable and fed until everybody looks great, and then we'll release her. If she gets too stressed out in rehab, then we'll release her a little bit earlier, but we'd like for them to look older, the babies, if we can, by the time we release her, so that way she has a better chance. She also has some pretty serious wounds, so we'll have to kind of see how she heals. But educating people about opossums and marsupials and stuff kind of helps create a better relationship. Can you hear me? Okay. So opossums, for example, and they will open their mouths when they're scared. They don't usually bite or attack, but they'll just open their mouths and show you all their teeth. So we really like to educate people on the fact that they don't live long and they aren't really a huge danger to people. So if you see one in your yard, it's usually a good thing to have, because they will eat bugs. And they kind of are nature's cleanup crew. So they're going to clean everything up for you. So we like to just talk with people and kids about what we do and help foster the thought that nature is wonderful and wildlife are so awesome to be around and to learn from, unless that they're scary and they're going to attack you. And while we focus mostly on kids with education programs, we have a lot of opportunities to educate adults. We had a situation last week where somebody was going to pay $600 to get a raccoon removed from their window well. And I said, oh, just put a board down there and he'll be able to climb out. So they did that, and he was able to climb out, and they thought he was going to go attack them the minute he got out. And I was like, no, it's just like spiders. They're more scared of you than you were of them. So he'll just leave if he can. And if he doesn't leave, then something's wrong, and give me a call back and we'll talk through that. But being able to educate a lot of people on a lot of different things is awesome, and being able to foster that. And through that is also how we get our release sites. So a lot of people that we talk to, they say, oh, well, you can bring it back if you want. And then we talk about the necessities of what we need for that release site. For example, we don't release raccoons on acreage that's less than 20 acres. The DNR asks that we have at least 2, but we go for 20 because we want to make sure that there's a good population there. And if it is good, then we're releasing them and they have enough resources for everybody. And we usually release our raccoons in litters of 6 to 12. So we want to make sure that everybody's got at least a couple acres each. So we go through a lot of our release sites, and through that we've got I think we're at 400 acres of release sites in various counties that we can release animals on. So that helps to also have that good relationship with the public and talking with people and making sure that they understand that what we do is for the wildlife. We want to make sure everybody has a good relationship with them. We're also able to help with a lot more hands-on outside of the center. So we have a few things that we do that's not in-house, and one of those is mange foxes. So mange is like a flea. It's a mite that foxes get, and they will lose their fur, and their skin gets really itchy and gross, and they smell like sweaty socks. And mange, being a flea, is extremely contagious among different animals. So if I have a mange fox in rehab that's next to a raccoon, and the raccoon is not treated preventatively, then the mange can spread from the fox to the raccoon. It's spread mostly through linens. So there would have to be cross-contamination, but it's still pretty high risk because it's just like fleas. So what we do a lot in the Carmel, Zionsville, and northern Indianapolis area is a mange fox program in the winter, which is where we will go out and we can treat these foxes in the field, and we don't have to bring them into rehab. So we can work with homeowners and landowners and people that see these foxes often to treat them via feeding them for a very short period of time, not enough that they can become used to it, but enough that they get the medicine in them because it's just a flea prevention pill. And we can treat people about or talk to people about mange and tell them what it is and explain what they're looking like. And a lot of times, because foxes lose their fur, they look very skinny. So they call us and they say, something's wrong, it's sick. We get a lot of people that call us about coyotes, and they end up being foxes because when they lose their fur, their skin is brown. So they look like not a fox. So we're able to educate a lot of people on that and tell them, it's a fox, and explain what's going on with that, and go from there. So we treated, I believe, about 17 foxes this past winter for mange, not having to bring them in. And that also, not only does it reduce the resources that we're putting into the animal, like food and housing and things like that, but it also reduces their stress immensely, because foxes, if you can catch a fox, then the fox isn't doing well in the first place. So we try and make it so that way they, when they come in, they only come into rehab if they have to come into rehab. And treating them in the field is one way of doing that. So that's what we do. We do a lot. And I am open if you guys have any questions.
What is your funding? How are you funded for your programs?
We are funded through grants and donations, so individual donations and grants. We don't receive any state funding for what we do, despite being the only state available, one of the only state available facilities for this type of work.
I have a question. Do you know how the Indiana situation compares to other states? Especially in this area, is it similar, or are there better resources available?
It really depends on states. I know that we are lucky in some situations, so we really don't have a lot of oversight, and that can be a negative thing and a positive thing. On the negative side, we don't have a lot of oversight, meaning that we don't, in my opinion, qualify for that kind of state funding. There's not the oversight of the state to be able to get us to that level for state funding, which is something that me and a few other rehabbers are pushing towards, is, having more oversight from the state. The good part of that is that, for rabies vector species, we can take those in. So we can take in skunks, raccoons, bats, and some other states nearby cannot take in those animals because they're rabies vector species. There's more of the Department of Natural Resources having their hands in that process. But they, in some situations, might receive more funding. As far as I know, there's no center like what we do that receives a large amount of state funding, unfortunately.
Tell us about the most interesting case you've had in recent times. I mean, like you say, you go out and treat foxes in the wild.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
So the foxes are pretty easy. I usually tell people, I'm like, okay, if he shows up on your back porch like 5 times and eats a can of cat food, then we'll put the medicine in the food and then just watch and make sure he eats it. My most interesting case recently was I got a raccoon from Bloomington, and Bloomington is about 2 hours from where we are. But I have a friend down there. So I reached out to my friend for a favor, and this lady said this baby raccoon fell from a barn 20 feet. So I reach out to my friend and I say, okay, can you take it in? Just give it the night. Let's see if it lives through the night. It's a week old. So, we're touch and go, even if it's not injured. And she says, okay. So she takes it in. She sends me photos. He has a broken arm. He's got a huge cut down his side in between his leg and his belly. He's got a few other puncture wounds. And I'm like, I don't think he's going to make it overnight. Let's just see how it goes. So he makes it overnight. She texts me in the morning, and we form this network of people that I know to get him up to where we are. So he gets up here, and the first 3 days, every time I open the incubator, I think he's dead. Like he's passed on, like we're done. He's still with us, and he is my most ferocious little baby raccoon I have ever had. He wakes up trying to like eat food. That's how he wakes up. Like I nudge him to wake him up because his ears aren't open yet. He doesn't have his ears open or his eyes open. So I nudge him to wake him up, and he wakes up ready to go. So it's just an amazing process. His arm has healed, his cuts are healing, and it's crazy to even think about, how resilient wildlife can be in some situations. So we're really proud of him. And his nickname is Crumble because he crumbled a little bit when he fell. So
Do you have a veterinarian, or do you have multiple veterinarians per county that work with you?
yes, so we have 3 veterinarians that we work with. We work with VCA Stony Creek in Noblesville. And we work with them mostly for reptiles. And then we work with Avian and Exotic in Indianapolis. And they are the only veterinarian that we know of that sees raccoons. And then we work with Hillview Veterinary Clinic in Franklin. So we work with all 3 of those.
And with your volunteers, what kind of training do you provide for them?
So volunteers usually start as a transport and capture service volunteer, which means that they either will take wildlife for a short 24 hours, and we give them the basics of what to do, which is keep it warm and test for dehydration, and then get back to us, and we work with them really hands-on. After a little bit of that, they can move to a foster volunteer, which is something that a lot of people choose to do because coming in and out of the center, it's easier for them to just do it at home. And that kind of also gives us a little bit more space here. So a lot of people, if they have previous animal experience or if they work with us for a while, we do foster volunteering, and they can take an animal in, and we usually start out with opossums because they're super easy. Once their eyes are open, they actually lap from a dish, so they don't need bottle fed or anything. So we usually start them with opossums, and we get everybody set up. We give them training on that specific species, and then I check in on them once a week. And my rule with them is if I put my hands on the animal once a week, there's nothing that you can do that's going to make sure that that would be detrimental to their health. So I check in with them once a week and make sure everybody's okay. And then from opossums, we train them on squirrels usually, which are a little bit more difficult. And then we train them on raccoons usually after that. So we work our way to the rabies vector species because of the risk of if they get bit, we do send them off for rabies testing. But we start slow, and then we do by species because it kind of helps them get down the basics and then what each species needs.
What's your most
So this question may have
popular-
come up, but where are you located? Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
We are located in Elwood, Zionsville, Fishers, and Newcastle at the moment. So we work between all of those locations.
Okay.
What's your most populous animal that you deal with?
Probably Eastern cottontails or bunnies. They come in litters of 6 to 10 usually, and they come in a lot often. I think we took in about 20 this week.
Wow.
Wow.
So my father-in-law used to trap raccoons and then release them at the post office. That's probably not the right idea then, right?
If you do it in the winter, it's okay. If you do it in the spring when they've got babies, I usually advise against it. So,
Okay.
Becca, do you want to tell everyone about the upcoming events that you've got going on? And I'll share that info on the screen.
yes, we have a event at the Indy Creation Fest, and that is I believe the 28th. So April 28th is the Indy Creation Fest. We have a baby shower fundraiser that we do each year. It's our 3rd annual one. But I received word this morning that the farm might have to have some last minute emergency repairs due to flooding. So we're talking with them to try and figure out what we're going to do with that this weekend. I'm not sure if anybody expected all this rain. It's a lot of rain the past few days. I know quite a few roads are shut down. So
Yes.
yes, the Indy Creation Fest is April 27th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's at Grace Church, and we will be there with our animals. We're going to be bringing a turtle named Squirtle. He's an eastern box turtle, and the Department of Natural Resources brought him to me. He was living in a drawer for 2 years in Indianapolis, and being an eastern box turtle, he has to be returned right back to where he came from. So he is going to come to, he came to us and he lives with us full time now. So.
I had another question. And I think it was just last year that we had issues with diseases in songbirds that were being fed. Can you talk a little bit about that situation? Or it seems kind of like it came out of nowhere, from my perspective at least.
Yeah.
And if we should expect that kind of problem in the future?
I know exactly what you're talking about. I believe it was the worst case was in 2021, I think, when we had all the cicadas come out. So we had 2 generations of cicadas come out, and when they came out of the ground, they brought a fungus with them. And the fungus actually made them hallucinate, the cicadas, and it made their butts fall off. And we all thought it was funny. And then the birds started getting sick, and they were all ground feeders, so birds that feed off of the ground. And it was a fungal infection that looked like conjunctivitis. So often birds get this thing called conjunctivitis if you don't clean your feeders. It's basically just an eye infection, but if they can't see, they can't eat. So they go downhill pretty fast. This fungus worked incredibly fast, and it was incredibly fatal. And we only had a few birds survive throughout the state. And I even got a call from a friend that I know in Ohio, and she asked if we were having it because they were having it, and nobody could figure out what it was at first. And I got nervous this year because there is a cicada resurgence this year, but luckily the map shows it's mostly Illinois, so it's not us. But when the cicadas came back from the brood X came up, they brought that fungus with them. So if you see a bird that has eye gunk, it's probably just conjunctivitis. We always recommend cleaning your feeders, but that year we recommended that you take your feeders down because it was very, very contagious.
Are you having baby lettuce? Hey, Princess Baby Girl, how you doing?
Any other questions for Becca? Okay. Becca, thank you. This has been appropriate for spring, I think, and very insightful. I live on a farm, and so I've got raccoons and possums and all the animals that well, except for turtles, all the animals that you've talked about. So it's good to know what to do with them if I see any of them that are injured.
Absolutely. And we always love people that are willing to work with us with animals. So if you have any questions, we're always happy to answer questions. Or if you have animals nesting, we're happy to tell you how to get them out humanely. So we really like to work to keep everybody healthy.
Okay, everyone, I'm going to go into my dad joke, and then if Eric or someone else can close out for me. So seeing that we just had an eclipse, and I know everybody, well, unless you were sleeping, you couldn't have missed it. So here's the stupid dad joke. How does the moon cut its hair? It eclipses it. Ha ha ha.
Okay.
They get worse every week, don't they, Eric?
Yeah. I don't think we need to even say anything after that. That's just.
It's bad.
I've got something here to share,
Okay.
and wanted just to pass along a thank you note from our Perry Meridian High School Key Club. They received subsidy from us to attend the district convention here, and wrote a thank you note. Let's see if I can share the link in this chat here. It's just nice to see a little message from the students and the advisors. Well, Kim Peters is on there. That they're very grateful for the support that we were able to provide. And then also we're able to send we're working to send 2 students to the International Convention in Atlanta in July, but they need some subsidy, they need some scholarship as well. So we'll be proposing asking for some scholarship funds from this club, as well as they've already got a list of other potential sponsors in the community, and other Kiwanis clubs too. So it's exciting. We haven't sent anybody to the international convention in years, from what I know. So this is great that they're interested. Just a quick note.
Excellent. Thanks.
Eric, did you see my note in the chat for you?
Oh, no, I didn't. Sorry. Let me see if I can. Oh, sure. Yeah. Rebecca, one of the things that we always do in honor of our speakers is to make a donation. So in appreciation of your time spent sharing with the members of the Kiwanis Club of Indianapolis, a donation will be made in your honor to Trinity Haven. Their mission is to provide safe, affirming housing for LGBTQ plus youth experiencing housing instability. So thank you for doing that, and hopefully you appreciate that donation.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We really appreciate your time with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right. So do I get to do the honorary adjournment? Is that the
If you'd like, yeah.
stop? Okay. All right. Well, good to see everyone. Thanks for joining us, and we are adjourned.
Thanks, guys. Bye.